Okay, think about this for a second. What if I told you that a single family of bacteria contains one of the most notorious agents of bioterror and also the key to making sure your dentist's office is completely safe? Let's dive into the fascinating, two-faced world of the Bacillus genus.
On one side, you have a name that just inspires fear, anthrax. But on the other, you've got this unsung hero of sterilization. The wild part is, they're related. They're both part of the Bacillus family, and their story really shows you just how complex and, frankly, weird the microscopic world can be.
So before we get into the good guys and the bad guys, let's just get to know the family itself. Let's meet the Bacillus genus.
These guys are, and I mean this literally, everywhere. They're in the soil, in the water, in the air we breathe. They're rod-shaped and what microbiologists call gram-positive, which is just a term for how they react to a certain lab stain, a key way we classify bacteria. But their defining feature, the thing that makes them such incredible survivors, is something else entirely.
Here's a look at their core toolkit. You see the basic traits, like their shape and how they move. But the real game changer, the ace up their sleeve, is that ability to form endospores.
These endospores are the key. Just think of them as microscopic survival pods. When conditions get tough, too hot, no food, too dry, the bacterium basically builds a fortress around its essential parts and goes dormant. It becomes incredibly resistant to heat, radiation, even disinfectants. This is its superpower.
All right, now let's turn to the most infamous member of the family, the one that really weaponizes that survival skill, Bacillus anthracis, the bacterium that causes anthrax.
So how do scientists tell this dangerous cousin apart from all its relatives? Well, one of the first big clues is movement, or actually a lack of it. While most Bacillus species can zip around, B. anthracis is non-motile. It just stays put. That one simple difference is a huge clue for identifying it.
And here's another visual giveaway. When you grow it in a lab, the individual bacteria line up end to end, forming these really long chains. It's so distinct that scientists call it the bamboo stick appearance. It's a pretty striking and unique feature you don't see in the others. And it's not just their shape that stands out. Bacillus anthracis is a giant in the bacterial world. It's one of the largest bacteria known to cause disease, which actually made it one of the very first microbes to ever be seen under a microscope. It has a long history.
So how exactly does it cause such a devastating disease? Well, it has a three-pronged attack. First, those super tough spores get into the body. Second, once it's active, it produces a capsule around itself, which acts like an invisibility cloak to hide from our immune system. And third, it releases a powerful anthrax toxin. That's what actually does the damage to our cells.
To see that three-part arsenal in action, let's look at the most common form, which affects the skin. The spores get in through a little cut. Within a couple of days, a small bump forms, and that turns into a blister as the bacteria multiply and release those toxins. Now, it can heal on its own, but in a pretty significant number of untreated cases, we're talking 10 to 20%, the infection can spread and become deadly.
Okay, now let's meet the other pathogenic cousin. This is one you've probably encountered without even knowing it, Bacillus cereus. Yup, this bacterium is a common cause of food poisoning, and it comes in two main flavors. The first one, which causes vomiting, is famously linked to leftover rice. That's because its spores can survive boiling, and if the rice is left at room temperature, they wake up and start producing toxins. The other form causes diarrhea and is more often found in things like contaminated meats and vegetables. Two different toxins, two very different, miserable experiences.
So how do we know it's not anthrax? Well, unlike its infamous cousin, B. cereus can typically move around, it doesn't have that protective capsule, and its colonies look totally different in a petri dish. For public health labs, these differences are absolutely crucial.
So we've met the villain and the nuisance, but the story of Bacillus doesn't end there. In fact, this is where it takes a really surprising turn, from causing disease to actually ensuring our safety.
And this brings us right to the heart of the matter. Because it turns out that the very same trait that makes anthrax so dangerous, its incredible toughness, is exactly what makes another Bacillus species so incredibly useful.
Remember that superpower, the nearly indestructible endospores? Well, think about it. If you have a sterilization method that's strong enough to kill a Bacillus spore, you can be darn sure you've killed pretty much any other microbe. Their toughness becomes the ultimate benchmark, the gold standard for sterility.
This gets used every single day in places like your dentist's office. It's called a spore test.
They take little vials of spores from a harmless species, Bacillus stereothermophilus, and they put them inside the autoclave, that high-pressure steam sterilizer. They run a full cycle, and then they test the vial. If the spores were killed, the machine is working perfectly. If the spores survived, that machine fails the test. It's the gold standard for safety.
And that brings our journey full circle. The very same family that contains one of history's most feared biological agents also provides the ultimate test we trust to keep our medical instruments safe. It's an absolutely amazing paradox.
From bioterror to a benchmark for safety, the story of Bacillus is such a powerful reminder that in the microbial world, a trait isn't inherently good or bad. It really all depends on the context. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other microscopic villains might secretly be heroes in disguise?